Because
Pearlie
I felt like the
Robinson says her
radiation
late
had
husband,
caused him
Joe
to have
Robinson,
leukemia.
never
He
had
didn't
any
have
health
no other
problems
problem.
until working on construction of the Farley nuclear plant near Dothan. Mrs. Robinson says when her husband discovered he had leukemia, he filed a $10 million suit against the power company.
In that type of job?
After his death in May, Mrs. Robinson amended that suit to the $100 million figure. An attorney for Alabama Power, Alan Baker, says the utility isn't responsible for Robinson's death. He says Mr. Robinson didn't work in an area where he could have been exposed to radiation. Mrs. Robinson says even though her husband was involved in construction before radioactive material was brought to the Farley plant, he also made some repairs after the plant was opened.
The one that he mostly worked in was Unit 4. When something would break down, he would have to go in there to do repair work. It's not the money that I want. It's not the money at all. If they could bring my husband back, then that's what I would really want. But I know I can't get him back. But I got to make sure, I want to make sure that my family will be well secure. I got 3 children. I'm in the process of being unemployed.
Mac Cormack, WSFA TV News.
Come on, Liam. Bob Joe, if you would preside, I'm going to have to step away for just a minute to answer a call from the governor.
Third bid, the account headed by, appears to be headed by Citibank.
Those figures, the two authorities have heretofore authorized it.
Oh, I know.
We would also like to authorize Mr. Broadwater to deliver the bonds to the purchasers that such places might be agreed upon.
I want. It's not the money at all. If they could bring my husband back, then that's what I would really want. But I know I can't get him back. But
John Knight of
In
the
recent
Alabama
weeks,
Democratic
I've given
Conference, and
careful
Dot Moore
thought
of
to
Montgomery
the
County's Democratic
possibility
Party
of
see Ted
seeking
Kennedy as a
the
unifying
presidency in
force in the National
1984.
Democratic Party, but
I've
both
discussed
feel
the
that there are other
decision with many
presidential
Democrats
hopefuls
across
strong
the
enough
country,
to carry the party
and
into
I'm
the White
deeply
House in
grateful for their
1984.
loyalty.
Well, I think it's certainly going to take someone's of Ted Kennedy's ability. However, I'm not going to necessarily say it will take another Ted Kennedy. I think that the upcoming election or race will be more issue-oriented than personality.
Well, Mr. Kennedy represents certainly a large faction or part of the Democratic Party, and that will be filled more than likely by Walter Mondale, would be my guess.
Mr. Knight says he considers several of the likely candidates for the Democratic nomination as sensitive as Mr. Kennedy to issues affecting black Americans. And he says more importantly, they're sensitive to the needs of the poor.
Because America at this point is beginning to be a country of the haves and the have-nots, and I think it's going to take somebody who will be able to bring those forces together.
Ms. Moore thinks Ted Kennedy could not have carried Alabama anyway. She says he's made too many mistakes in his personal life to appeal to the average Alabama voter. Still, Ms. Moore says she can respect the man for putting his family before political considerations.
I'm sorry he has the problems that he has with the wife and all those many problems, and the child with cancer. This is very sad, and I think the people in America, I think their heart goes out to this man.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Appears to be the lowest. Okay. Well, the lowest total interest cost appears to be the account headed by Citibank, and Leach.
Those figures, the two authorities that appear to...
Do you have any,
Well, we have a closing date set for December the 16th, and we intend to close the issue on December the 16th.
What if the suit's still pending at that time?
We hope that it will not be pending.
But what if it is?
If the suit's still pending, we'll have to review the matter at that time, and it will probably be an assessment that our law firm will have to make as to whether or not to close it.
I need this job, but this is the last straw.
All right, now wait. Let's just sit down and...
Look, I got a gun out there in my purse.
Dolly Parton may not have been suffering from PMS when she flew off the handle at boss Dabney Coleman, but premenstrual syndrome can turn a mild-mannered woman into a wailing banshee.
I'm going to change you from a rooster to a hen with one shot.
The difference is, in real life, it isn't very funny.
It's like a creeping paralysis. It would take over, it would build, it would start again. And it had me in its grip, and there was very little I could do.
I have extreme depression. I feel very depressed. I can feel it happening, but there's not anything I can do about it.
For centuries, both men and women have said that feelings like that are just part of being a woman, that it's all in her head. But now the medical community is starting to say that such feelings may be because of physiological changes going on in a woman's body.
No one knows for sure what causes PMS, but some doctors now believe the answer is hormones. In a normal menstrual cycle, an egg is released from the ovary. While the egg travels to the uterus, progesterone is produced by some ovarian cells. Progesterone prepares the uterine lining for a fertilized egg. In some women, that progesterone level is much lower than normal, possibly causing PMS.
Premenstrual syndrome is a series of symptoms that may vary in terms of both somatic and psychologic symptoms that have a cyclic recurrence with reference to the menstrual period. A key component to the definition of premenstrual syndrome is that there must be a period of time during the cycle during which the patient does not have any symptoms whatsoever.
PMS research shows symptoms generally present themselves in the 2 weeks prior to menstruation. Victims whose symptoms worsen with age experience tension, depression, irritability, severe headaches, backaches, rapid weight gain, bloating, acne, and severe cravings. PMS sufferers do not have painful periods and do not tolerate the pill well. Women with severe cramps during menstruation or no problems with the pill probably do not have PMS. Susan is a married mother of two.
And I just sat down and I cried. And I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know if I was going through the change. I didn't know what was wrong, and I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to pull myself out of it. I was afraid I was having a nervous breakdown.
You really thought you were going crazy?
Yes. Yes.
Patricia Jesse thought she was going crazy too, and doctors gave her little reason to think otherwise.
I couldn't believe it. I said, gee, I've been trying to tell these people this and no one would listen to me. And you try to get help and everyone thinks that you need to control yourself.
That's not the kind of thing a woman wants to hear when she's suffering from something that is very disruptive.
Julie Egger is co-founder of PMS Action, a counseling group near Madison, Wisconsin that directs PMS sufferers to help many don't find from their doctor.
Many doctors have said to women, you know, it's in your head, see a psychiatrist. One woman was told to go put another coat of nail polish on.
If doctors seem lacking in understanding, it may be because they're lacking in information.
I am certain that many physicians are totally unaware of it.
Dr. Jeffrey Ellis, a gynecologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, points out that PMS simply isn't a part of most medical school curricula, and that many women patients don't mention their monthly health problems because they don't know it's abnormal.
And I think that for the most part, women have been conditioned to believe the fact that every month they should be in a state of debilitation.
Only recently, through the work of British physician Dr. Katharina Dalton, has PMS received much press. Last fall, Dalton's 30 years of PMS research was the basis for a landmark decision in England, where 2 women convicted of murder and attempted murder had their sentences reduced or commuted because PMS had rendered them incapable of controlling themselves. One of those charged was Nicola.
Well, I was charged the first time with arson and criminal damage. And the second time I was taken there, I was also charged with intent to kill and endangering life.
Nicola's crime was committed during the 4 days before and after her period. Nicola managed to keep out of prison because she's being treated by Dr. Dalton with progesterone, a natural hormone. Progesterone has helped calm her violent moods. One day she is all smiles and happiness. Then another day there'll be no living with her. The sea is like that also. Often it lies calm and still, then it will go wild and turbulent. That was written about women by a Greek poet 2,500 years ago, but it accurately describes the premenstrual sufferers of today. This is a discussion group at PMS Program, a clinic for PMS sufferers outside Boston. It is a place where women in desperation come for help.
I knew there was this monster in me that at any moment might come forward.
Unlike most human ailments, PMS is not one which can be diagnosed through laboratory tests. There is no quick way to determine whether a woman is suffering from premenstrual syndrome.
But there are people willing to help. One of them is Julie Egger, a co-founder of PMS Action, a Wisconsin group that provides educational materials to sufferers of PMS. She denies charges that PMS victims are reverting back to the days before the women's movement.
If men had this kind of thing, the same questions about it being a step backwards would not be raised. It's a real tricky issue in that way, because another part of the feminist question is, why haven't women been listened to about this problem? And that's because we're not taken seriously, and that's because we're women.
If you think you might have PMS, listen to the questions Gail Keith, a nurse practitioner at the University of Illinois Family Planning Clinic, asked Beverly, a 26-year-old nurse who thinks she has premenstrual syndrome.
I get real crabby, real irritable. In college, I was more aware of it then, because I had boyfriends and they always said, I know when you're getting your period because you're so moody.
What about crying easily for no reason?
Oh, I do that. Yeah.
Okay, and how about eating binges? Do you ever go on chocolate binges?
Yes.
You don't want to admit that, right?
Beverly may or may not have PMS. Mrs. Keith says she does have some of the symptoms, which are tension, depression, irritability, severe headaches, backaches, rapid weight gain, bloating, acne, and sudden cravings. Just having one or some of the symptoms is not a sure sign of PMS. The key is in the symptoms' timing.
And by the symptoms and the severity and the timing, when these symptoms are, that will really give me an idea if this young woman is premenstrual or not.
Here are 2 women with the same menstrual cycle for 3 months. Patient A does not have PMS. Her symptoms occur throughout the month. Patient B probably does. Her symptoms, marked by H's, begin only during the week to 2 weeks before her period. When her period begins, the symptoms stop. Patricia Jesse has had PMS for 6 years. She is still hoping for a cure, but she says just knowing what is happening with her body is therapeutic.
Keeping the calendar is helping me cope. Because when I do these things, I know there's a reason, and hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel for me.
There is no cure for premenstrual syndrome. The symptoms stay with the woman until menopause. But in many cases, the physical and mental problems of PMS can be controlled, often simply by changing one's lifestyle. Bloating, breast tenderness, and some headaches can be caused by water retention. Advice: a low-sodium, low-carbohydrate diet to stop retaining water. For some, a mild diuretic is also helpful. Tension, irritability, and headaches can be caused by low blood sugar levels, say PMS experts. Advice: eat 6 small, high-protein meals spaced throughout the day to keep sugar levels constant. Avoiding coffee, tea, colas, and chocolate is also a good idea, as they can increase tension. Regular exercise to work off stress is often advised, and some health practitioners prescribe B6 vitamins to reduce stress. But about 10% of those with PMS need stronger therapy, like progesterone suppositories. Since many believe PMS is caused by an abnormally low progesterone level, supplementary amounts of the hormone can be helpful. In this woman's case, it was.
The other morning I could shake the orange juice and the top came off and the orange juice went all over me and all over the kitchen. Instead of absolutely going crazy, very calmly mopped it up.
But for most women, progesterone help is not available in this country since the FDA has not approved progesterone suppositories. They say they haven't been tested enough, but researchers are trying to get those tests approved.
Has sponsored over the years. The JASDF has gone to that to you as well. But that one I believe is inscribed on the back, as well as to provide the academic environment. And you have contributed to the such gorgeous plaque. I've got a lot of plaques in my room. That's one beautiful. You might want to just keep them in here. And also as a
we'd like to think we've been saving our pennies and so forth here and investing it. Mainly, we like to think it's revenue sharing we've saved for capital outlay. We did not put it, the county did not put it in in a general fund to spend on a day like a lot of counties have. So we've invested it, and that's the reason we can borrow less money than it's going to cost us.
At that time? Yes. What hospital did he have down? At Baptist Memorial? Grease, and how did he get burned with grease? He fell into a high portion of rock.
Of the three state football championships to be decided tomorrow night, perhaps the best will be right here in Dadeville as the Tigers take on Hazelwood for the 2A championship. An interesting note on this game, Hazelwood comes in as the defending 1A champion. They now move into 2A and are hoping to claim the championship. And the Dadeville Tigers, of course, are the defending 2A champs. So how do you pick a favorite in this game? You might say Dadeville should get the nod, being the defending champion and also playing at home. But many, including Tiger coach Wayne Cahey, insist that Hazelwood is the team to beat.
Hey, if they were playing in 3A, they might be playing for it in 3A. They've got an excellent football team, and we're just excited about playing against a fine football team like that. They've got tremendous speed. They've got about 6 backs that all can fly, and we're going to see them all. They keep running different backs at you all night long, try to wear you down. But we're real excited about playing such a fine football team.
Accepting challenges is nothing new for the Tigers. Cahey has had his troops in the 2A playoffs 3 straight years now, and they've responded with 9 wins in 10 outings. Therefore, you believe the coach when he says his team is afraid of no one.
We just think every time we go out, we can win, and, you know, I think you have to have that to win. One thing we've always based our team on this year is enthusiasm. We believe that the more enthusiasm that we have, the better that we play. So we're definitely going to be fired up tomorrow night.
Dadeville and Hazelwood for the 2A championship. Kickoff Friday night in Dadeville is 7:30. Reporting from Dadeville, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
Something about what our job is.
Well, we're here today to show you right here. And you know we're ready to put the ball on.
It's running faster now than it ever has been or there.
Murder somebody or burglarize someplace just to take food supply for the rest because most poor people do not.
Running a campaign for governor is a very expensive undertaking. For Governor-elect George Wallace, it cost him just more than $2 million. Financial disclosure forms for the general election showed Mr. Wallace collecting almost $700,000 and spending about $671,000. Combining his general election figures with contributions and expenses from the Democratic primary and primary runoff elections, the figures are large. Over the 3 election periods, Mr. Wallace's records show he's collected $2.25 million in contributions and has spent $1.9 million. Mr. Wallace's records also show an outstanding debt in loans totaling $329,000. That apparently leaves Mr. Wallace just more than $7,000 in the black. Money he can save for future political campaigns, or money he can convert to income if he so wishes, or return to the contributors. Mr. Wallace's general election opponent, Republican Emery Farmer, submitted his disclosure forms late this afternoon. The records show Mr. Farmer spent $2 million in his unsuccessful bid. Mr. Farmer's campaign aides said contributions neared the $2 million mark for the single general election campaign. Yet another gubernatorial candidate, socialist Martin Boyer, didn't spend nearly as much, only $1,900, but he cited several court cases and refused to disclose his contributors' names. The Secretary of State's office is looking into that. The race for office was more costly than some could afford. For instance, Secretary of State Don Siegelman spent more than $64,000 for his re-election bid, but could only muster $52,000 in contributions. It was a deficit campaign for 2nd Congressional District incumbent Bill Dickinson. For the year, he spent $257,000 and collected only $202,000. The disclosure form for Representative Dickinson's opponent, Billy Joe Camp, had not arrived in the Secretary of State's office by the close of office hours. All candidates must have their forms postmarked or submitted to the Secretary of State's office by midnight. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
A lot of businesses and farms and
As far as I know, he doesn't intend to try and take it any further. I'm very gratified by the decision because, of course, I knew that Tuskegee does not countenance such policies. Black Americans have experienced the harshness of discrimination too much to permit that to take place in our institution, at least not in this one. Computer science.
Exciting, exhilarating, and exhausting. That's how Dr. Payton describes the trip. He says their party visited 7 countries, meeting with government leaders, telling them how interested the United States is in offering assistance to Africa in as many ways as possible.
One of the more interesting developments was the expression of great interest on the part of the heads of African universities in establishing relationships with American universities. They are particularly interested in establishing a relationship with schools like Tuskegee Institute, which has programs more related to the kinds of things that need to be done in order to develop the country. For example, they need more engineers. They're very much interested in our School of Engineering. They need architects. They're very much interested in our architecture program. They need specialist scientists in agriculture and in home economics.
Dr. Payton says Tuskegee already has many Africans enrolled in classes, and he says he expects the number to increase. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News, Tuskegee.
Such as veterinary medicine, in agriculture.
This large volume contains pages and pages of guidelines architects must use in designing energy-conserving state buildings. Building Commission Director Philip Fretwell presented the new Conservation Code to the members of the Commission and read a lengthy paper on the 2-year history of the document. Several members of the Commission, who also happen to be members of the state legislature, were concerned with adopting such a lengthy set of rules without really understanding what the rules are. But the code was adopted anyway with the stipulation that modifications, if needed, could be made during the February meeting, and the rules wouldn't take effect until they'd been on file with the Secretary of State for 60 days. However, the director of the Administrative Procedures Division of the Legislative Reference Service, Lou Green, says according to a law passed by the legislature in 1981, any new rules must be submitted to the Administrative Procedures Division before they are adopted, and a public hearing must be conducted. The Secretary at Administrative Procedures told TV 12 News that no proposed Alabama Building Energy Conservation Code has been filed. The Deputy Director of the Building Commission, Dr. Alan Wiggle, says the Commission believed filing the code with the Secretary of State was sufficient. He says it's the Commission's intention to do what's necessary to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
There are a lot of different ways to communicate the spirit of Christmas. 15-year-old Wendell Corbin uses his special communication board, and by pointing to color-coded symbols, he can express holiday greetings. Here, a group of students and teachers from Madison Park use a system of hand signals called Amarin for its American Indian origins. 'Twas the night before Christmas with talking hands.
But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all, good night."
And in this play, some of the children set out to find the spirit of Christmas. They found it by following a star to a manger. The audience was told that the true spirit of Christmas is in the gift of life. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
As a result of the trip, Dr. Payton says Tuskegee Institute is going to try to pinpoint how the school can offer assistance to Africa. He says the assistance would vary, with exchange programs and special projects planned by Tuskegee and African universities. The Vice President's party visited 7 African countries. Here, the Vice President is speaking to a group in Kenya. The purpose of the trip, according to Dr. Payton, was to let the Africans know how interested the United States is in assisting Africa in as many ways as it can.
He was very candid with them in explaining that our economy is going through a period of recession, and that one of the best ways we could help Africa would be by first getting our own economic house in order so that we would have more that we could share. But he also talked about sharing what we have already.
Dr. Payton says one thing that concerned him was the lack of black ambassadors in Africa. He says he asked the vice president to speak with President Reagan about changing that. But Dr. Payton says the fact that he was invited to go with Mr. Bush is a step in the right direction. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News, Tuskegee.
The State Fire Marshal's report on the Catawba County Jail is sizzling, pointing out about 48 violations of state safety codes, many of them serious. Fire Marshal Thornell says inspectors found exposed wiring and light sockets, improvised wiring, several appliances plugged into extension cords, smoke detectors not working properly, combustible material stored in a room with a gas water heater, no emergency lighting, and some mattresses, pillows, and a couch made up of polyurethane, which emits poisonous gases when it burns. County Sheriff Robert Turner briefed the County Commission on how the jail fell into such a state of disrepair and what's being done to correct the problems. Sheriff Turner told commissioners it was hard keeping the facility up to standards because inmates are constantly destroying fixtures in the jail to make weapons. Sheriff Turner says most of the infractions cited by the fire marshal will be corrected or have already been corrected. Sheriff Turner says it's not a case of neglect.
I've always been concerned with their conditions, and like I told you once before, we cannot furnish them everything that they'd have at home, but we try to make it safe and clean for them, and we're going to continue to do that.
Sheriff Turner also told commissioners using fire-retardant trash cans will cause additional problems because weapons can easily be made from the harder plastics. Chairman of the County Commission, Probate Judge Jim Corley, says he agrees with the State Fire Marshal's findings and will comply with 97% of the report. The commission approved hiring 2 nighttime jailers to supervise prisoners. Up until now, that job has been left up to trustees between 6 o'clock at night and 6 in the morning. But the commission decided against building 2 additional fire escapes and replacing a ventilating hood over the stove. Judge Corley feels the State Fire Marshal's office should have required the extra fire escapes when the jail was being constructed in the early 70s. But Fire Marshal Thornell says until 1977, his office only inspected county jails on request. And to his knowledge, the Fire Marshal's office was not asked to review the plans for the Catawba County Jail. Fire Marshal Thornell says according to the state codes, a second-floor cell block needs another fire escape. As of now, there's only one way to get in or out of the cell block. The commission has appealed the State Fire Marshal's order to the Catawba County Circuit Court, and it might be the court that has the ultimate say on how long the facility can be used, even with the current improvements. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News in Catawba County.
This is the culprit, the jet stream, warm air coming off the Gulf of Mexico that should stay over the Gulf, but instead it's in the eastern half of the country, causing our warm temperatures and high humidity.
Ordinarily this would not be happening. We might get maybe one day of it, but we've so far now had 3 or 4 days of it and possibly going to have one more, so it is quite a bit unusual for this time of December.
Nobody seems to be complaining about the shirt-sleeve weather, but it just doesn't seem right somehow to see Santa Clauses near bank clocks with 76-degree temperature readings. But don't despair, Mr. Pettit says the cooler air should be moving in by Sunday, and these record temperatures of the past few days will end. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
We're in a pretty prime condition right now over certain parts of the southeastern United States for tornadoes. Yesterday we had 37 total in Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri. The day before that we had quite a few in Oklahoma, Missouri. today they're occurring again in Louisiana and Arkansas and even along the Mississippi border in Tennessee. So we are set up for potential for severe weather. So we're going to have to watch it real close. Whether we'll have them right down in Alabama, we'll just have to wait and see.
This jet stream circling the Earth, drawing warm air off the Gulf of Mexico, is bringing us the 80-degree temperatures. The air is stalled for now with high-pressure areas on either side, and the weather will stay as it is until one of the highs gives way. Mr. Pettit says with more rain, the temperatures will cool off, and that warm air should move over by Sunday. So for now, all of you enjoying shirt-sleeve weather in December, get your jackets ready. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Dr. Vickery warned the librarians that a threat to the integrity of their profession is emerging. He pointed out that attempts to censor books in the country's libraries have more than tripled since last November. This, he says, indicates the book banners and burners are still very much with the educators. Dr. Vickery pointed out one national survey which shows more than 20% of the nation's school districts and 30% of school libraries faced censorship controversies during the 1980 school year. Dr. Vickery says one area he's concerned about, not only as an educator but also as a parent, is the controversy over the teaching of scientific creationism in our schools.
And I can tell you as one father and one taxpayer, what I do not want my son to be subjected to in the 3rd grade of the Monte Valley Elementary School is a narrow point of view regarding the origins of man and questions that relate to Genesis. That's wrong. Indeed, in a fundamental way, I think it's un-American to try to put into public school curricula what are essentially religious concerns. Moreover, to do that, and perhaps of greater concern to some of us, is to undermine the integrity not only of science but of religion.
Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
If you hear any more, will you give me a call?
I think that the law has been applied selectively against us. It's never been enforced in the past, and I think the whole thing has been very largely politically inspired.